Hello, folks. This is Dr. Jones again. Unit 2 has several cases in it and several readings in it that um, talk about how you're making decisions and how people go astray. And this is largely a leadership issue, and I think that's how we'll take a look at it today. So briefly, we're going to run through some of those decision-making thoughts. Now, you'll remember in past lectures, I looked at what are different ethical theories that people use. Well, at least by using ethical theories, you can understand how people come to certain decisions. But in Unit 2, what we really are looking at is not the use of different theories, but rather where people go wrong with their discussions. And so I think it's useful to us to pick up where one of the writers talks about certain kinds of dilemmas. And we'll just bring some of these up there. Um, is it a moral or ethical issue if you dye your hair in order to look younger or cover up tattoos so that a potential employee or a potential employer doesn't see that you have tattoos? Are those really ethical and moral issues? Well, part of it is going to stem from why. So if you don't like that you have shafts of white hair and you don't want to have that anymore, you don't think it makes you look as good, well, that's a decision that you're making. If what you're trying to do is to make somebody think that you're 35 instead of 45 or 55, there's a completely different issue because you're trying to deceive people. Covering up tattoos, are you looking at brandishing those tattoos in the workplace once you get hired? Oh, I've tricked you into hiring me, and now I can do everything that I wanted to do. I've known people, young people with tattoos, and they understand that the workplace doesn't want a lot of tattoos shown out there because a lot of customers don't like seeing people waiting on them that have tattoos everywhere. Okay, does that mean it becomes an ethical issue? Not necessarily. I think it looks at what is the intent. We're no longer looking at should somebody get a tattoo or not. They've got a tattoo. But if they can cover it up in the workplace so it doesn't become distracting, is that a bad thing? Yeah, I think you have to look at, to some extent, things like this as, you know, uh, why? What are your intentions out of it? Now, if you look at the last one of these, would you donate to somebody that you didn't believe in because your employer asked you to do that? That becomes a potential legal question because there are federal election laws that restrict the ability of employers to ask for or require um, political donations to candidates, even if it's a candidate that you believe in. There are some restrictions out there on that. Now, if you want to do this because you believe it's right, and if you tell your employer that you've donated to a certain campaign, well, that's up to you. There are potential implications with that if your employer doesn't agree with you, or if he or she does agree with you, there are potential things that could come out of that. But requiring somebody to do that, that's really a legal issue, which then it becomes an ethical and moral issue as well. So sometimes your dilemmas are there not because they're actual ethical issues, but because um, we need to look at your intent and what would you like to do. There are some things, though, that are intentionally deceptive or improper. And so, yeah, we rationalize a lot of things. Now, I have not dyed my hair. I have a beard. You can see that in the photo that I have. I try to keep it trimmed. Does my trimming that beard rather than let it go out all grizzly and make me look like a mountain man, does that, is that an intent to deceive on my part? No, not at all. I just like it I like the beard. I trim it so that it looks better out there. But there are times when you might say, um, I came in 5 minutes late, but I doctored my time card. And I know other people that do it, so everybody else does it. Okay, that's an ethical issue. Besides being potentially something that's illegal, um, it definitely would be unethical to do that kind of thing, and it doesn't matter if everybody does it. I mean, remember, I don't know if your mom or dad ever said this. I don't think mine ever did, but I heard about it. Well, if everybody else jumped off a cliff, would you do it too? If you haven't heard that before, you've heard it now. But, obviously, it doesn't matter how many people do something, right or wrong, as that action might be. Is it right or wrong for you in a situation? Because jumping off a cliff might be the right thing to do. There's a fire coming at you or something else, and you jump off a cliff into the ocean and swim away. Well, that doesn't mean that jumping off a cliff is a bad thing. It just means why. What's the intention behind it that you're doing it? The quote from Jack Del Rio, hey, this is something that's against the rules, but everybody does it. So, hey, don't worry about it. Those things are much more concerning to me. Now, how do people go off the rails and do things that they shouldn't do? I got to tell you, it's pretty easy to do, and we all understand that. Sometimes it's because we think we're doing something for the betterment of others. If you tell what's called a little white lie, because it's not going to hurt and everybody's going to, think uh, good things. Is it still a lie? It's still a lie. Is it something you shouldn't do? Yeah. But as my dad told me as well, he said, well, sometimes you don't have to lie. You're not misleading other people. You just don't tell everything that you know. So if somebody is dressed up in such a way that it doesn't look good, you don't have to come out and say, you really look ugly today. I hope you laughed at that. Yeah, you wouldn't tell somebody to do that. But you also shouldn't come out and say, oh, you really look good today, because that's a lie. So you don't have to engage in a lie to also not do something or say something that's harmful out there. There are other ways to act. Okay, if you heard that little, sorry, I had to stop there for a second. If you heard that little ringtone going on, that was my son calling me. So I just paused the video rather than starting it over. So pardon me on that one. In any case, as what I was saying, if you know, sometimes we just walk down a path we shouldn't walk down. If you disregard the rules, as one of the points is here, if you disregard the rules, or you forget the good purpose that you were going for because uh, you're going for more money or more fame or more prestige or whatever it is, it's easy for you to get lost um, in the wrong thing. And we see that happen. We see it happen in ourselves. Is we're not perfect people, but recognizing that and then making amends for it or correcting your path or making a better decision, that's part of some, what we see as people who are good people at heart, who are trying their best to make the right decisions, the right path. And if you realize that you are not the be all and end all, if you decide that you have an opinion, you have activities, you collaborate with other people to try to make the best decisions, I think you start down a better path, and one that's more likely to get success out there as well. So if we're going to do this, and make better decisions, then part of that comes from you know defining our issues by the values that are in there, not by the circumstances. Now, we're not talking about snap decisions, as I've talked about before. We're not deciding, you know, do we need to get everybody out of the house because it's on fire? That's a different kind of decision. We're looking at, should we put a product out that we don't believe in and that we know, could cause harm? Well, that's pretty easy. If you've got a good, sound, ethical base, then you're going to say, no, I shouldn't do that. But if, on the other hand, you're not sure if something's good or not, but it'll make you a boatload of money, then you have to look at what is the real thing that you want to try to do, and not going after something just because it's profitable. And profit is fine. In fact, that's why we look at things in business. You got to make a profit to keep the company alive. But if you do so at the risk of losing your ethics, then you've really gone down a wrong path. You've, as the last point here says, you have a failure to define your issue properly. You're looking at the wrong goals and objectives because there are other things that are also important. I like this slide here. Probability from the Financial Analysts Institute. The amount of money involved creates a function here. If you go back to your mathematics, the probability of an ethical outcome is a function of the amount of money that's involved. It's an inverse relationship typically. The more money that's involved, it lowers the probability of an ethical outcome. That's what this slide's trying to say. And quite often, yeah, that's going to be true. But just because something's profitable, even wildly profitable, does not mean it's unethical. So this is a funny thing to look at, but please don't take this as God's truth out there at all. But I do like these steps, and this is how we'll end this lecture. If you look at a situation and you figure out what are the decision points of this, and what are the implications of the possibilities out here. If you seriously sit down and think of those things, because you're making a big ethical decision, go back to one of the earlier lectures where I said, are you afraid that if people knew you were making this decision, if they saw it in the headlines, or if your gut gives you butterflies, or if your mother heard that you'd done this and she'd become, alarmed about it? All of those are good rules of thumbs. They're part of these, analysis steps. What is it that is logically and rationally helping you to make your decision? And if you can look at this and you can say, okay, I went through and I really thought about the different parts here, and then I made sure that I was framing this issue appropriately, then I could probably make a better decision and make the decision that's the right decision, whatever that is. Thanks, folks, for listening. I appreciate it.